Thank you.
Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you for joining us. Today we have Andrew Saunders. He is joining us from Truist Bank. He is a data scientist at Truist, and he has been generous enough to join us for our career cafe on careers in data analytics. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube after it has been recorded, this was recorded on March 15th. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Saunders, and it's all yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm joining you from Charlotte, North Carolina. I am currently employed with Truist Bank, formerly Suntrust Bank. We are merging with BB&T, so we've been under the Truist moniker for about the past year or so. I started my career at Suntrust about 10 years ago, but I'm going to go back to high school for a minute. So I actually went to high school in your local area. I went to J.R. Tucker in Henrico County and graduated a very long time ago. And from there, I went to Longwood University for 2 years. That's actually where I met April Corbin, who is married to a good friend of mine, Jonathan Corbin. And I actually met April before her husband did, and we were good friends. And I was a musician back then, still am, but April used to come and listen to me play music back in the day. From Longwood, I transferred to Virginia Commonwealth University, and I graduated undergraduate there in 2008 in the middle of the financial crisis. And from that point, I had a choice to either go and get a job and actually join the working world or to stay in school. And I had really been interested in economics as an undergraduate, and I decided to pursue my master's degree in economics, and I graduated in 2010 from VCU with a master's degree in economics. Now, back in 2010, there weren't many degree programs specifically related to data science. But I would say that what I did take at VCU was essentially a data science degree. Lots of model building and playing with big data and things that really helped me in my career. So from VCU, I went and worked in DC for about a year for a military contractor called URS. And I was a contractor for the Army. And I helped them comply with the Clean Air and Clean Water Act. So I was estimating the environmental costs for military bases all over the world. That was some really interesting work. There were a lot of cool kind of side projects outside of that where I used my statistical knowledge to help the Army determine, specifically in Fort Bliss, Texas, they had a firing range. It was called the Kastner Range, that they wanted to start building houses and parks and things like that. So they asked me as the statistician to stratify their sample data. And when I say sample data, they actually flew a helicopter with a giant magnet strapped to it over this firing range to determine just how much metal was in the ground. And that would determine how much unexploded ordnance there was. So essentially think about this firing range as being like a big range full of landmines. That's essentially what they were, unexploded ammunition. And they need to determine, hey, is this safe to build a park on? Can we put a playground here where there's all this ammunition? So they asked me to stratify the sample into high, medium, and low risk areas. And the higher and medium risk areas were cordoned off for a cleanup. And the low risk areas, they were safe to build parks and housing upon. So that was kind of stressful. It was my first job coming out of school. But thankfully, they only relied on me for my statistical knowledge and not my knowledge of unexploded ammunition. We had a whole team of environmental scientists who were able to help me in creating my samples and determining what was high and low risk. So from URS, I decided to come back to Richmond, Virginia, and work for Suntrust Bank. And I was hired as part of their mortgage risk department. And I was involved with building models, specifically around mortgages, to determine which customers were likely to default on their mortgages. And those models were used to help us pass the Dodd-Frank stress tests that were passed. So the Dodd-Frank law being a law that was passed after the financial crisis, where banks were put under higher scrutiny, so that we could be well reserved in the case that another mortgage crisis came our way, and that we would have enough money on hand to deal with that financial storm. And if our loans started going bad, that we would be able to cover our losses and not be reaching out to the government for another bailout. From my position in risk, I later moved into retail banking, and specifically into a group called Omnichannel Analytics. So omnichannel is kind of a buzzword in the data and analytics world these days, where we look at all channels through which a customer interacts with the bank, be it via the phone. So if you're calling into the call center, there are two different channels within your phone call. One is the automated phone system that you're all probably familiar with, when you get a menu that pops up as soon as you call into a call center, and you're asked to either speak or press your touch tone phone to navigate a menu that may or may not eventually lead you to a live agent, and that live agent being a separate channel. Along with other non-phone channels would be like ATM or branch transactions or online banking or mobile banking, or your teller transactions versus the transactions that occur in the back office in a bank, and ATM. So we'll look at all of those different channels through which a customer interacts with the bank to get an idea of their general activity within the bank, and be able to determine what type of customer you are. Are you a regular online user and you never end up going into the branch, or vice versa? And we can use that channel segmentation to determine how we're going to market to you, and determine if there are any problems within a particular channel might be causing customers to call in frequently. So after working in omnichannel analytics, I ended up being poached and pulled over and directly into the client contact center world, specifically around phone calls, be it in the automated phone system or with live agents, or in our live messaging chat function in the online banking. And I've built a lot of statistical tools that are used on a daily basis throughout the bank, but specifically these days for contact center. So I want to speak with you today just to give you an idea of what the path towards a data analytics career looks like, and what things you can pursue now if you are interested in that path, if you wanted to gauge your interest. Because I'll personally say that I never saw myself having this career that I've had, and each individual choice that I made along the way have summed up to this career, but it's not something that I sought out for myself. And I probably would not be one of the high school students or middle school students who would have joined a meeting like this when I was your age, since I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So the fact that you have joined shows that you're being proactive and you're interested in your career at a very early age. So I'd like to nurture that if I can, and be here for any questions or comments. And if I don't get any questions or comments, if people are shy, then I'll be happy to just go freeform and talk about different programs that I think are available to you, or different things that I think are particularly interesting about my career as it sits today, or throughout the history of it. So anyway, that kind of sums up my intro. Anybody have anything to add, or any direction they'd like me to go in? I'm sorry, Shannon, looks like you're muted.
I am, thank you. I think just like you were saying, just sharing advice with some of our students. We've got students, both in middle school and high school on today's visit. So really just like you were going to do, just share with them information about, things that they could be doing now if they have an interest in data analytics, or just anything related to this type of career field, no matter if they're in, 6th grade versus 12th grade. So definitely, I think we'd be interested to hear about that. And thank you for sharing your background. I think that is also helpful to know kind of, where you've come from to where you're at now. So thank you.
Okay. Well, without any more specific question, I'll just say that if you want to get into this career path, you better have a love of math and a love of numbers because they will be your life. I loved math as a student, and I think that love kind of, we had a wayward relationship in high school, me and numbers. And I think that, sometimes you end up coming back to the things that you love as a kid, as an adult. So I'll say that originally, when I was in high school, I thought that I was going to be a career musician. And music and math are definitely interwoven, but they are not quite the same thing. There's something that is ethereal about music, it just kind of exists in the air, whereas numbers seem to be a very concrete thing. But I will say that pursuing music definitely taught me that if I work hard at something, that you can build upon skills day after day, and every day you get a little bit better. And I think that I've taken that into my career with numbers and used that same kind of learning framework. But specifically, I think that there are going to be a lot more resources available to this generation that were available to mine. And the thing that has really set me apart from my peers has been my coding skill. So if there are any coding languages or any classes that are available, absolutely pursue it. Primarily these days, I am coding in SQL and SAS, being the primary two languages that kind of intertwine with one another. So SAS is a program data set where everything has been tidied up for you by the professor. But in the real world, things are messy, and you end up having to understand how different data interacts with each other. So specifically on the client contact center side, I'll try and make this as real world as I can, but still have it be understandable. So something that I've often said to people about client contact center data, a lot of people are familiar with Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower. And Edward Snowden ended up blowing the whistle, or letting the public know about a program that was being done by our intelligence services, where the NSA was compiling all of the phone metadata for all citizens across the United States. And this phone metadata captured who were you talking to, how long was that conversation, and what time of day did that conversation initiate, and what time did it end. And that data actually tells us a lot about a person and who their friends are and who they're interacting with. Well, that's the same data that I'm working with at a bank to understand our customers. However, what I'm doing is completely legal, and it helps us serve the customers better, and it's not this invasion of privacy. This kind of data can alert us if there is a particular problem going on and we're not serving clients correctly. So today, for instance, we have a close eye monitoring all of our calls that are coming in regarding stimulus payments. So your parents are likely receiving stimulus checks in the next week. And because they're receiving these stimulus checks, and they might not know exactly when those transactions, when that money is going to hit their checking accounts, they're going to be calling the bank and asking when they can expect to see those payments hitting. And we're going to have answers for them. And if they all flood and call the contact center around the same time, we're not going to be able to serve them in a timely manner, and they're going to be very upset with us. So we are monitoring this activity and looking at previous stimulus payments to see how staffed up do we need to be in our call centers in order to handle this increased call volume, read, analyze, process that aren't necessarily models. So something that a lot of people on the outside don't realize is that building statistical models comes with a lot of scrutiny and baggage, and it really slows things down. Generally, if you find that your problem is best solved via a model, then that's maybe the path you should pursue. If we are trying to determine if a customer is a good credit risk or not, then maybe we want a model that gives a probability that they're going to default on their loan. And that would be the best solution. And if that model is built, then it has a lot of baggage that goes along with it, where we have to, on a semi-annual basis, multiple times a year, we will have to validate that model and ensure that it still works as intended. And we will have to, do all of these bureaucratic things versus other ad hoc analytics that we can do using big data and using programming languages, where we would be able to come to the right answers for our company without having the baggage associated with the model, and being able to determine the nature of a problem and solve it quickly and agilely versus having a process that is kind of really laborious and has a lot of baggage associated. Anyway, I will say that there have been some tools that I've been able to build that don't involve the baggage associated with model. And, I probably didn't need a master's degree in econ to build or to understand. And it's just a lot of common sense things that I'm able to implement, but I wouldn't be able to do them without my knowledge of big data and being able to code. But I don't necessarily need to know, how to run a regression analysis to be able to do it. So that being said, if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt and let me know. But if not, I'll kind of describe one of the tools in particular that I built over the past few years that's proved to be really useful. And I think it, could be an example of something that is really simple when you break it down, but takes a lot of, takes a coding skill set and a data and analytics skill set to be able to build. So anyway, unless there's a question, I'll go ahead and proceed. So I've built something called sales funnel reporting. Now in the client contact center, we're primarily a service channel. We're helping customers solve their problems that don't really involve opening a new product. But we do have a significant sales portion of what we do, and some clients choose to open their accounts over the phone. So in those instances, we wanted to be able to track exactly why and how clients open up accounts over the phone. So we have our phone metadata, and then we have our application data, and we also have our incentive system data. So we have a whole system of where clients have entered in, that they want to open an account with a client, and they'll start an application for a particular account. Well, in order to identify what call drove those sales, I was able to merge the phone metadata that gives me client information, where I can see their unique identifier, similar to a social security number, a timestamp on that phone call, and an employee identifier. So I have employee plus time plus client. And then on our application system, I can see the client who's applying, the employee who took the application, and the timestamp associated with it. So by merging those two data sets, I'm able to see, was this an application that occurred on a direct marketing campaign call? So we'll send out a piece of mail to a client with a phone number on it that will lead them directly into our sales department. And when they call in on that phone number, that's a phone number that's exclusive to that sales campaign. So any call that occurs, we can attribute to that sales campaign. And so we're able to merge these two disparate pieces of data, our phone metadata with our application system data, to credit that campaign with that sale. So nothing crazy, but it is large data, and having the capability to merge that data and understand the joins that go across these disparate data sets will allow us to tell marketing if their campaigns are effective, or to tell our service teammates how good of a job they are at referring sales over to our sales department. Now, I know that's very specific in the kind of skill set that I'm talking about, but I want just to give a real world example of, it's not rocket science. What I'm doing is complicated, and it takes a while to get that skill set. But as far as understanding the actual job, it's pretty simple, and it leads to a pretty good life if you're able to pursue this career path. And I definitely encourage anybody who's thinking about it as a career, that I think that it's been a great career for myself and lots of other folks. And if there are any questions related to anything about this career path, please chime in.
Mr. Saunders, we appreciate all that information. It's very good. And I think you've worked for a couple of different industries, with the government, with a mortgage company, and now with a bank. And I'm thinking, a lot of kids, they're going through school right now, middle school, high school. They may end up working at a bank, but that's not any. A lot of them are thinking other things like Google, Facebook, TikTok, Epic Games, places like that. Do you see that as a growing, the data scientist, data analyticist as a growing field in those industries as well? Or
Absolutely.
Anybody that works in those fields?
Yeah, and it's a massive need with, I think, not a lot of people with the skill set. So a lot of demand for this kind of skill set and very little supply. And it's all of those industries. I'll speak specifically. So a good friend of mine runs a digital marketing company, which digital marketing primarily these days is Facebook and Instagram. So she actually contracted with me, and I did some work for her to analyze her data. So with Facebook and Instagram, it's all basically a marketing funnel, where we're looking at, okay, how long did your intended target customer, how long did they hover on your ad that you posted on Instagram or Facebook? Did they end up clicking the ad? How long did they view your video? Did they end up taking action? Are you selling a product? And so you can actually monitor their activity to see if they clicked your link and ended up purchasing a product in Amazon or whatever store you happen to be selling your product in. So I was able to help her comb through that data, even though she really understood Facebook and Instagram. But as far as analyzing her data and dealing with those large data sets, she had to rely on my expertise. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And
You're frozen right now, Mr. Saunders.
You can definitely do it with having a data and analytics skill set, while still doing something that you're passionate about today, like social media. Now, as far as being a game developer with something like Epic Games, this isn't that skill set, but I think that there's a lot of correlation with this skill set and that skill set. There's still a lot of writing code. But I would say that as far as growing a business like a gaming company, this skill set will definitely help you serve that, because you'll be able to identify your key target demographic of customers and determine how well you are doing at getting them to walk through your digital storefront. So I think those things are definitely valuable. Even if you're just interested in being a social media influencer, understanding data and analytics will help you be able to analyze the funnel of people who have liked your particular page, and then end up who is actually listening to your songs and who is actually attending your shows, and determining how effective you're being. And you'll actually have to pay Facebook, which Facebook is the company owning both Instagram and Facebook, to get your marketing materials in front of your prospective customers. And if you want to be able to spend your money effectively, you need to understand this stuff. So I think that it's definitely relevant to people who aren't even professionals yet and who are just trying to understand social media and how it functions to get people's eyeballs, get people watching, get people listening.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. This has been fantastic information today. I think just for students to be able to get an idea kind of what this field is about, ways that things that they can be doing now in their classes, and thinking forward for, in high school, but also beyond high school. If they have any follow-up questions beyond today, would you be okay with us letting them reach out to you directly if that's a
Yeah,
possibility?
absolutely.